And that's the biggest component of it all, because without agents, you have no value, right? That's
Right.
all value in a real estate brokerage resides in the agents. So if you can't transfer the agents, you have nothing to sell. So that's the primary driver.
Hello, everyone. Rick Albert here with another episode of the Key to the City of Angels. I'm super excited because we're finally going to talk about a big topic I've been wanting to talk about for a while. And who better than Norma Rawlings of BrokerVMA? Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
It is my complete pleasure, Rick.
All right. So your role is to help brokerages basically buy and sell brokerages, right? Is that kind of the general idea? How did you get into this space?
So my business partner lives in Bradenton, Florida. I live in Canada, and we went to and got our MBA together, Rick. And so we've been friends forever. And he asked me to come help him about 3.5 years ago when, you remember very clearly, I'm sure, the COVID high, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden in 22, things started to change, and there were lots of broker owners that were clients of his. He does broker coaching, that needed to buy or needed to sell, and he didn't have the capacity to help them. So he brought me on board, and we started our company, and it has been steady ever since.
That's great.
Yeah, it's been fascinating. It's the thing I love most about it is I'm dealing with entrepreneurs every day. So there's nothing better. Personally, the entrepreneur mentality is different than the average person. Very interesting. So it's never dull. Every day, there's always something going on. There's always some crisis that's happening or some huge initiative that's being launched. And so I always find it very enjoyable to deal with my clients.
That's amazing. So have you been getting more calls about selling versus or buying? I'm curious on what you're seeing right now in the market.
It's an excellent question. So we do 3 things. We do valuations for succession planning, estate planning, partnerships, mergers, anything in that vein. So that's probably about 1/3 of our business. And then we help brokers who want to expand buy new brokerages. So we call that recruiting through acquisition. So you think about how hard it is to recruit one agent at a time. The theory behind this is you buy a brokerage. You buy 20 agents, 30 agents, 50 agents all at once. So that's the second thing we do. And that's probably another 20% of what we do. And then the remainder, which is almost 50, it's probably 45 or so percent, is selling. So we help brokers who want to exit sell their brokerages. So we do that in a confidential sales process that maximizes.
You mean off market?
Completely off market. You know, it's funny, Rick, is we always laugh because you know how as a real estate broker and as a real estate agent, you completely understand that FSBO does not give you the maximum price in a situation, right? But so many brokers, because all day long you deal with buying and selling, assume they can sell their own brokerages.
And it's a different product.
I'm like, but guys, the moment you call your competitor and tell him that you want to sell, you've opened yourself up to that confidentiality. Like all of a sudden words on the street and all your agents are being targeted. So we run a really tight confidential sales process that's completely anonymous until we get an NDA signed, and then we have conversations with prospective buyers. So those are the 3 things I do, and it's split, as I say, about 30% valuations, 20% people buying, and another 50% people selling.
So then what makes a good buy? If I'm looking to buy up a brokerage, typically you look at profit and loss statements, but I feel like because they're all independent contractors typically for the real estate agents, so the dynamic's different. So what are you looking at in terms of metrics?
Yeah, I know. It's a fantastic question. So the biggest question mark is exactly what you just said. Will the agents transition to you? So that's a cultural fit. That's a commission style. That's a positioning within the market. It's the concept of, if I'm an agent with the seller, will I be comfortable when the seller transitions her business to you? And that's the biggest
Mm,
component of it all, because without agents, you have no value, right? That's
right.
all value in a real estate brokerage resides in the agents. So if you can't transfer the agents, you have nothing to sell. So that's the primary driver.
Okay. But then, okay, so here's the next question. Is it based on the number of agents or the production per agent? Because my big thing is my gripe with the real estate agent community is that there's not enough business to go around. That is my personal opinion. I think we've been oversaturated with agents, but the problem is we've created a system for it. The
Yeah.
National Association of Realtors charges $156 a head. Doesn't matter if they produce or not. So therefore they need more bodies. Brokerages, if they do commission caps, that means that they cap out at each agent. They don't want agents that produce 60 million a year. They want 10 agents producing 6 million a year. They make more money that way.
Right.
So what are you seeing when you're selling these brokerages? Are they looking at production? Are they looking at production per agent? Because that can play a role if 100% of your business is from one agent, even if you have 30 agents in the company.
Absolutely. So when we value a brokerage, that is one of the things we
Okay.
consider. Is we say, okay, let's say the broker is the biggest salesperson. That's going to reduce the value of your brokerage for the same reason that we just talked about before. When you're transitioning the agents over, your biggest value agent is the selling broker. Okay, what if he transfers over and leaves in 6 months? Then the value of his business is far less than if he had 30 agents. And in most cases, as you point out,
Sure.
20% are phenomenal, 20% do nothing. And the other 60% are somewhere in the middle, maybe doing 1, 2, 3 deals a year, 4 deals a year. The more diversified across the agent roster the production is, the higher the value of the brokerage. And it's for the reason we talked about earlier, which is then when you transfer those agents over, you're going to maintain that cash flow, that revenue. Because ultimately, once you verify that you can actually transfer the agents over and they'll go, then you're looking at cash flow. So the way a brokerage is valued is you look at the last 12 months of cash flow and you say, what did your brokerage, Rick, provide to you in the last 12 months? And you look at the personal benefit to you, the cash it generated, and then you put a multiple on that. So that's a method of valuing a real estate brokerage. But yeah, agent production, your comment about there being too many agents, I think a lot of agents would agree with, because the incentives are to collect that membership fee rather than to make the industry viable such that every agent can make a decent living from being an agent. And right now with the low transaction values, the low transaction count, it's even harder. It's so hard in parts of the country because you just don't have the volume. And for brokers who rely on transactions to charge transaction fees, you're dying. A lot of them are struggling.
Is that why a lot of them are selling? They're just like, look, I've had a good run for 20, 30 years. I'm tapped out. It's time to retire. But
Yeah.
is that why a lot of them are doing it? Like, why would, if a brokerage is very successful, other than I'm just pooped, I'm 100 years old, like, what are some reasons that they are selling?
It's funny you said 100. The oldest broker that we had was in his early 90s. So
Okay.
I have
Oh,
not
that's
had
close.
I have not had 100-year-old yet. But there's a bunch of different drivers. The first driver is a difficult market. So to your point, I've been in it for 30 years. I'm not making the money I was before. I'm tired. I want to spend time with my grandkids. I want to step back a little bit. I don't want the burdens of agents calling me at midnight on Saturday about a deal that's cratering, right? So that's one driver for sure. A second driver is just you're getting older. You're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And you're like, I want to slow down. I don't want to do this anymore. So that's a second driver. A third one is economic necessity. So we've had a lot of brokers that are writing checks every month to cover their operating expenses. And that becomes gold really quickly. And so those brokers will come to us and say, I need out. I can't keep doing this. I'm down 100,000. I'm down 200,000. My wife's going to kill me. Get me out of this burden. So those are probably the three main drivers of people wanting to sell. And then there's a fourth one, and that's I built this fabulous business and now I want to cash it out, right?
Yeah. So the ones that are bleeding money, because it's always interesting when I hear that, because I've heard of that before, but it's like, but they're commission based.
Yeah.
The overhead in theory should be low.
Yeah.
Right?
You're right. But yeah, theoretically, yes. And my business partner does broker coaching. And so he's a big push for him the last 3 years has been, we've got to get all those expenses of yours margin adjusted. Because as you and I talked about before we got on, the COVID market isn't coming back. So COVID was a huge boom for everything real estate. And then 2023, 2024, 2025 happened, and it's not coming back. The volumes are way lower. The price appreciation is way lower. Or some of them have gone down. So that whole sort of market piece, he says to his brokers, look, what you just said, you've got to adjust your expenses or you're going to die. So occupancy and payroll are the two biggest expenses typically for brokerages. And oftentimes they're fixed, right? You have a rent, you have a lease, you're tied into premises, you're tied into a certain number of employees. And so the key is to reduce those as quickly as you can humanely, because otherwise you're not going to survive. So the brokers who are bleeding cash are, every day is their enemy. Time is their enemy. Like every month that continues, it's another $5,000, another $10,000, another whatever. So they are very motivated to sell. And the reason is typically they're stuck in a high expense environment that they can't adjust.
Yeah, they got that office space on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills thinking that the location was going to be stellar.
Yep.
It wasn't. And now they're paying, I don't know, I remember reading an article years ago. It was like $150,000 a month.
You know what? Some occupancy numbers that we've seen are truly eye-popping, and not just in like what you're talking about, which is craziness. $150,000 a month is more than most people earn in 2 years. But what's crazy is I've seen a number of brokerages where their top line, half of it is going to occupancy. And you think to yourself, for every dollar in commission that the company earns, you're sending 50 cents for a premises. That's way out of whack. So and again, you can only do so much, right? You have to have the intent, but you also then have to deal with the reality of contracts and leases and how long if you entered into a lease in 2021, convinced that the COVID market was the new reality, you could be still suffering with it if it was a 5 year. So it's challenging. And when you see those situations, all you want to do for the broker is you want to find a buyer who will relieve the burden and allow their own operations to absorb some of those expenses in a much larger context where it's not a devastating situation.
One HR person per 100 agents might be doable. So you don't, it sucks. It's my podcast. I can say like it sucks, but like you're going to lose those HR people on the other end. That's the whole point.
That is the harsh reality. The harsh reality is
right. So there you go. That's a better way.
We have two brokers that I can think of, very active clients of ours. One's gone from 16 locations to 30 in the last 3 years. The other's gone from 28 to 60 in the last 4 years. So growth-oriented brokers, inevitably, when they go into an acquisition, they don't say, I'm just going to keep it exactly like it was, right? They're going in saying, okay, my CFO is going to be able to handle this one in addition to their existing obligations. My accounting people are going to be able to, my accountant's going to be able to deal with this one in addition. I've got lead generation. They often will layer, Rick, mortgage, title, life insurance, relocation, all of the ancillary services around it if they don't have it already for additional income streams. So they always have a plan to create the synergies and then add the additional services. So the harsh reality is people are going to lose their jobs when there is merger and acquisition activity.
Where are you seeing, like location-wise, you're talking about people doubling their office count. Where are these happening?
Our one broker is out of New Jersey, and he's gone from
Okay.
28 to 60 in 4 years. He has expanded out of state. So he now has locations in Florida, all across the eastern seaboard, up to New Jersey, one in Arizona. He's looking at one in Washington state. So he's one of those guys who will buy, usually keep the management team in place of where he buys, and then he will just provide the ancillary services we talked about to create more profitability. So that model works really well for him. The other fellow is in Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Northern Florida, that region, and focuses on that region. So different philosophies, right? I chatted with a broker in New York City, and I said, I've got a boutique Texas luxury brokerage. Are you interested? And he said, not on your life, Norma. I am sticking to New York State. He said, if you got anything in Manhattan, I'll gobble it up, but I do not want to go out of state. Whereas other buyers, happy to go to any of the 48 states. They generally don't want Alaska or Hawaii, but the rest of the states they'll consider.
So some of the locations you are mentioning, I'm thinking like some of those are the average price point for a home, I think might be higher than the national average, right? Because I know there's parts of New Jersey that can be pricey, parts of Florida can actually be pricey.
Yeah.
Does that kind of play a role? Because to your point, it's like whether I sell $100,000 home or $1 million home, typically the effort's roughly the same.
Yeah.
But the commissions are higher. Is that something that your brokers are like factoring in? Okay, I don't want to be in like your New York versus Texas. Price points are vastly different.
Vastly different. For him, the decision was Texas is not. So his philosophy, Rick, is if I can't drive to it in about 3 hours,
Okay.
I'm not interested. He's got a local philosophy. He's saying, I want to focus on the boroughs.
Sure.
I want to focus on where I'm at. Our broker who's expanded into all those different states, it's not about price point. So the people who are price point focused, like you just pointed out, are my luxury guys. My luxury guys are
Fair.
like, has to be 2 times the median, Norma, or I won't even look at it, right? So they have a metric that's very specific as to what they want. Whereas the guy who's out of New Jersey, he looks at it from an ancillary service point of view. So his whole philosophy is the more real estate agents I have, the more locations I have, the more I can layer on the mortgage, the title, the relocation, the insurance, and I can make money from all of those touches on that same customer. So that's his business philosophy, is he layers the corollary services onto the core brokerage offering. But you're right, each buyer has a different mandate.
But also they're transferring the culture, right? Hey, I'm only buying luxury brokerages because I know how that culture is. I know how that dynamic is. And I'll bet you the personalities in the ultra high end here in LA are probably similar to the ultra high end in Florida because a lot of those people are moving back and forth. Like I could see that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it's the compatibility piece, which is what we're talking about. Right? It's the culture, it's the compatibility. It's these customers sometimes have a home in Big Sky, a home in Miami, a home in LA or San Diego. That's normal. It's normal that they have multiple properties, or they're buying properties for their kids, and it's across the USA. And even into Canada. We get some in Whistler and Banff, in Muskoka. So yeah, the luxury clientele is when you look to buy a luxury brokerage, you have to have the chops to run for luxury clients, because it's just a different, the concept of, oh, I've got my main brand and then I've got my luxury brand within my main brand. That's a challenging metric to make work. It's more likely that, no, I'm a Sotheby's, I'm a Christie's, I'm the agency, I'm a niche player within a market, and all we do is luxury, which is tough because it's very exclusive. So I often deal with brokerages with 100+ agents, which is exceptional, right? 100 agents or more is a huge number of agents. The luxury guys I deal with are usually 30, 40, 25, 50, because it's to do double your median price. That's a niche. That's a very
Oh yeah.
exclusive niche.
That's when we recently moved, and so my brother-in-law was like, "Hey, are you going to join like a country club?" And I'm like, "I can't. I'm not going to pay thousands of dollars for a country club." He's like, "But you can get clients." I'm like, "I'm not spending thousands of dollars." No, you don't understand. You're paying the few $1,000s. Other builders aren't.
Yeah. No.
So your barrier to entry is actually much lower.
Yeah. No, it's always. So I've dealt with a few luxury brokerages in the last few months and selling them. And it's different. They think differently than you or I would as a normal person. The high-end real estate agents, they know the best golf clubs. They know the best schools. When they talk to their clients about where to live, there's an exclusivity to certain neighborhoods. This is the club. If you're coming into this community, this is where you want to send your children to school. This is where you want to have a club membership. You're right. There's a knowledge base there that is different from your average person's realtor.
Yeah. I noticed here in LA, like there are some agents like farm neighborhoods, right? Oh, this is my specialty.
Yeah.
What I've really noticed is it's not categorized by neighborhood. I've noticed that a lot of agents are categorized by price points. Like I've taken on listing, like for example, I recently got a couple listings from one client and she's like, "Have you sold a lot in this neighborhood?" I'm like, "No, but this is the first time home buyer territory. I know first time home buyers."
Yeah. Yeah. So it's an expertise.
Like that's exactly.
It's
but it's not expertise on the neighborhood. It's the price point.
And the key is, it always boils down to, can you sell your customer's home for the best possible price on the best possible terms in a transparent way? And if you can, you're the guy. And so that expertise gives you the confidence to say, I've done this 50 times. I know exactly how to roll this sale to get you a great result. And I think you look at all the litigation going on amongst all the big players and all the fighting. Yeah. And you and I talked about Compass Anywhere before we hopped on the broadcast. Ultimately, it's about, does it serve the customer? And that's what you're talking about. You serve that customer brilliantly because you know that market. So if you're able to satisfy the customer's need to have their house exposed as broadly as possible to get the best possible price and deal terms, you've done your job.
Right. Now, let's talk about that Compass Anywhere merger, because Compass is all about mergers and acquisitions. And to be fair, he's been called out on this in interviews, Robert Refkin, and he totally pivots. He's very good at that. So for example, John Arrow Group was a big brokerage here in LA. It got bought out by Pacific Union, which was really big in San Francisco. And then very quickly, Pacific Union got bought out by Compass. That's how Compass has been growing. And now they've done this Compass Anywhere merger, which for those listening, Anywhere is basically just a group of brands: Sotheby's, Century 21, Coldwell Banker. Like by LA County, by way of example, Compass was the largest brokerage in terms of volume. Coldwell Banker was number 2. By a far margin. Compass had done about double the business. But basically, number 1 just bought up number 2. So I'm really curious to get your opinion on this. I'm surprised it went through. It feels a little antitrust-ish, but
and as quickly as it did. Yeah, no, it's
that too.
So a few things about it. The first is a lot of debt, right? $3 billion worth of debt. So that's something to watch. And as a result of that, they don't have the generosity of purse strings, Rick, that they did before. So where the deal you described that was done in your area would not be done today, because they just don't have the ability to write a check for that amount right now. All of the brands within Compass and the Anywhere brands have dramatically changed their metrics because of that $3 billion debt. So that's something that we're definitely seeing. So we deal with Christie's, we deal with Sotheby's, we deal with Coldwell Banker, we deal with Corcoran, we deal with Better Homes and Gardens. We deal with the entire suite of Anywhere brands. And the challenge right now is none of them can spend a lot of money for conversion, because you used to have conversion incentives. I'm sure you've got lots of people who are like, "Rick, come change to this brand and we'll pay you a conversion incentive." That's tougher because their metrics are less generous than they were. But the other challenge that I see is you've got 10 brands now competing against each other. So you think about your LA market, you have every one of those 10 brands in the LA market, all now owned by the same people, all now competing against each other. How long does that last? How long does that make sense? To our point earlier about our broker who is going to create synergies when they buy another brokerage, Compass has to be looking at anywhere saying, okay, we need synergies because we got to pay down this $3 billion worth of debt. So you wonder how many internal mergers are going to happen, how many brands are going to be subsumed into another brand because they can't afford to continue to be independent. You talked about Century 21. Are they going to survive? Are they still going to be a separate brand 4 years from now? Is Corcoran? Is Better Homes and Gardens? Is ERA? I don't know. I don't know. Coldwell Banker, I think, will be. Christie's and Sotheby's are subject to a licensing deal, so I see them staying separate long term because the auction houses behind them aren't going to let them merge. Compass will stay its own brand, but I don't know. Are we going to lose 5 of those 10 brands over the next couple of years because it doesn't make sense to have everybody competing within the same city? I don't know. It's far above my pay grade, Rick. I have opinions, but
no, of course. But who cares if they're competing? Because on an agent level, I'm competing against agents in my same office. Yeah. That's just, who cares? It's just a matter of where the check goes to. So why does it matter? Is it more, I think is the concern more of value proposition if they all have the same value proposition?
Yeah. And if you maintain all your separate brands, how do you create those synergies? Right? Like are they going to amalgamate all the back ends, but still keep the separate brand identities? It's just it's a matrix. It's a complex matrix in every single city in America. Yeah. That's the reality. Every single city in America has multiple brands that are now wholly owned by Compass.
So then putting your mergers and acquisitions hat on, you're like, okay, this merger just happened. Now we got to make it profitable because Compass needs to get higher stockholder value. What would you do if they said, Norma, you have the hardest job in real estate right now. You need to pay down this debt. You need to make this work. What would you do?
I think I would resign. No, I'm like, no.
First golden parachute, then resign.
That's right. I need to be severed off, and then I will resign. No, it's an excellent question. It's frankly a multi-million-dollar question.
Right.
It's a challenge I'm sure that Compass management is looking at right now because they have to be saying to themselves, okay, the party line has to be everything stays the same, right? Because agents hate change. Everything stays the same on the ground. That has to be your initial message. But then longer term, how can it stay the same? Anywhere was burdened with a ton of debt. If you leave it the same as it was, you're never going to pay off the $3 billion worth of debt. Sure. So you think, okay, there has to be change. What is the change? Is it that we look at which are the stronger brands, which again, my opinion, Coldwell Banker's the longest standing brand in America. It should stay.
Agreed.
Sotheby's, Christie's, you can't do anything about. They're auction houses giving you a license. You can't merge them. You can't. So they're separate. Compass, I think, is always going to be there, right? You're always going to have Compass as a brand. So then you say, okay, what are the remaining brands that are now potentially capable of being merged together over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? And so I think that's how you would approach it. And at the same time, you would say, how much efficiency can we create with not needing 2 CEOs or 10 CEOs or 12 CEOs across the empire? How much synergy can we create by only needing 1 CFO, 1 accounting group, 1 marketing and sales and lead generation guys? Like I think that's the conversation that has to occur because you have to become profitable again. And I don't know that anywhere ever was. Compass certainly is. So you have to, with that huge debt burden, you have to become profitable so you can pay it off. And as you said, benefit your stockholders. So that's my 10-cent suggestion. 10 cents worth of advice. That's how I would approach it if I were them. And it's going to be painful. There's no two ways about it. Whenever you merge that large of an entity, that complex of an entity, and you have 10 brands immediately impacted, it's not going to be easy, and it's going to be painful for a lot of the people within the brand. And the risk you run is you have people who love the Better Homes and Gardens brand. When you tell them that they have to become a Coldwell banker, does that scan? Does it resonate with their values, with the way they see themselves, with their long-term vision? I don't know.
That's a good point. I was thinking along the lines of cutting the fat. So it's like, all right, because it costs money per agent to have them, even if they produce zero. So for some of these offices, if I'm Compass, I'm going in saying, all right, here are the agents that are underperforming. They either need to get on a performance plan, just like any other business, or you're out. Because if an agent's only doing 0 to 1 deals a year, it actually costs you money to have them.
Yeah, you know what? That's a radical thought, because so many chase size. So it's a radical thought to say, what is the cost of your lowest producing agents? What is that? What is the drag on your for those people? But it's radical only because you and I've seen it, Rick. Like they advertise how many agents they have. They never advertise how productive all those agents are, but it's a feather in their cap to be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And Remax, for example, Remax in the States is losing agents. Remax in Canada is gaining agents. So,
interesting.
There's advertisements around, look, we're the number one player in Canada now because they're growing. And every brand has that mentality. So your suggestion is probably incredibly sensible and completely contrary to the way they look at the world.
Because my thought is, because you're right, it's just like law firms. We're the number one law firm. I'm like, number one in what?
Yeah.
Attorney count, in injury attorney cases, like number one in what?
Yeah.
So if you're a brokerage and you're like, look, we just got bought out by Compass, they're cutting the fat. Are we now the number one brokerage in our city? Not in agent count, but that's good for you, consumer, because you don't need thousands of agents to choose from. You only need ones that actually produce.
Yeah. Again, certainly when you run your business, and I watch my best brokers run their businesses and they do a fabulous job, they are always looking at productivity of agents.
Right.
How can we help our agents succeed? How can we help them sell more? How can we help them make enough money that they have a nice life? And that is a mission, frankly, of so many of our good broker clients, because ultimately you want your people to be fulfilled and able to support themselves and then become champions of your brand. So as I say, fundamentally incredibly sensible. I just suspect that the need to brag,
I don't see that happening,
that you are the biggest based on agent count, even if the bottom 20% of your agent, to your point, do 1 deal a year if they're lucky. But your suggestion is eminently sensible.
No, but you're right, especially with the battle over off-market properties. To be able to say we have the largest agent count means, like, the assumption is, okay, you also have the largest off-market inventory. Whether that's true or not, up for debate, but I get it.
And it goes back to that conversation we had earlier about what's best for the customer, right?
Right.
And that whole private listings versus public listings, to the customer, they just want their house promoted across every single platform so that they get the best price and the best terms. So that's ultimately the value proposition that an agent provides.
Yeah, no, I agree. This has been like amazing. I'm so glad. I've been wanting to have a conversation with someone about this, and I've talked about it with other people, but as someone who's like on the broker side, it's always great to get your perspective. How can people get a hold of you?
So everything contact wise is brokervma.com. Everything, all of our contact information is at that website. So BrokerVMA stands for Valuations, Mergers, and Acquisitions. So brokervma.com is the best way to reach me. And it's been a complete pleasure. As I say, you have some radically sensible ideas.
You know, that's why I can't run for politics.
You're
I'm
way
just too sensible.
blunt and way too honest. That's right. And that probably makes you a darn good agent and broker, because you just tell your clients like it is.
That's true. That is something that not enough agents are doing right.
You know what? When you think about a customer, they don't want sugarcoating. They want to know, what are you going to do? What's a realistic price that I can expect? How long is it going to take? And what are the deal terms going to look like? And if you're transparent with them about that, they trust you. And what you said earlier, they refer multiple properties or multiple people to you.
Yeah. And I tell them, look, at the end of the day, the market is what the market is. Yeah. Here's the data, but not me, not you, not his estimate. And that's one of the challenges we have right now.
Yes.
Is I'm going to some of my sellers and I'm like, look, the comp supported this price. Yeah. Clearly we're not getting it. Here's all the marketing we've done. We got to adjust.
The market will tell you
what it is. What it is.
Yeah, the market will tell you. Exactly. The market will always tell you what it's worth. You might not want to hear the market's opinion, but the market will always, especially if it's efficient. If the market is working efficiently, it'll always tell you what your property is worth.
Agreed. All right. Norma, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Everyone, I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did, and I will see you guys next week. Want to keep unlocking the secrets to building real wealth in Los Angeles? Stick around for the next episode. Tap the video on screen to keep watching.